So welcome back to the channel. I've got Mr. Dave Savery here with me.
Hi.
Electrical superstar, electrical royalty.
I don't know about that, Kev.
But Dave's going to help us. Dave's been doing quite a bit on his channel about particularly using the PEL 51 and power and energy logging. So we thought we'd do a video on the top 5 reasons to use a power and energy logger. So I'm going to talk those through with Dave. So that said, let's get started. So here we have the power and energy loggers, and obviously we've got loads of videos about these on our channel and on Dave's channel. But we've basically got the PEL 51 is a single phase power and energy logger, really targeted at the domestic market, probably light commercial, that sort of thing, but it's single phase. And then we've got here the PEL 104. The PEL 104 really is targeted at single phase, 3-phase, DC, and all those things. So it's really the top of the range power and energy logger. And we've just released our contractor's kit, which we've got a separate video on, Dave and I talking about. So we're releasing that one. So when we're talking about power and energy logging, we're talking about really using our PELs, our power and energy loggers, and what's the top reasons for that. So let's have a look at number 5. So reason number 5 to use a power and energy logger is nuisance tripping. Often as electricians we come across this thing, we'll have a phone call from a customer, you know, a breaker's gone, a fuse is blown, but we don't really know why, and it's quite hard to investigate sometimes, isn't it, Dave?
It can be, sometimes with overcurrent faults. Obviously when you've got a earth fault you can break out the IR tester and start taking some readings to try and narrow down where that's coming from, but overcurrent can be a little trickier to track down unless you've got an obvious smoking gun by something literally going bang.
Smoke itself would be an interesting
always
symptom,
handy, but if you obviously with something like an overcurrent fault, taking out a protective device, be it that a breaker or a fuse, this could be something that's happens quite quickly. Something, for example, with a near short circuit, that when it switches on, bang, it takes out that device. Or it can be something that happens over a period of time, so something that's running over the limit of the protective device in such a way that it's not quite enough to blow it instantaneously, but it's enough to heat it up to the point where it fails. Yeah,
it can be quite sort of combining of different equipment, so quite difficult to narrow down sometimes, because you might need 2-3 different bits of kit on at the same time to get it to that level where it's going to trip off and on for a certain period of time as well.
And with trip faults, the magic is catching it in the act. There have been many a time we've been called out for trip faults that are intermittent, and obviously if the thing isn't tripping or blowing or failing while you're there with your instruments in hand, then it can be quite tricky to track down what's going on. You can do a bit of detective work, a bit of sleuthing around, you can get some baseline test numbers and some data from the site, but you kind of got to catch it in the act. And if you're not there to catch it in the act, well, you need something to do it for you.
And I think this gives you a bit of a solution you can do for the customer, because it always feels bad for the customer, doesn't it, when you just have to go, well, just call me if it does it again. Whereas now you can take this, put it on, you actually feel like you're doing something active for the customer, you're providing the service, and you're going to catch it when it happens.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about the logging equipment, is whether it's a short, sharp shock kind of fault that, as I say, with a short circuit, it's going to give you a big spike, or whether it's something that's prolonged. If you've got something that's monitoring, I believe these kind of devices, what are they captured, 200 times a cycle or something? Yeah,
they're monitoring virtually permanently. They're measuring all the way through the cycle, and then they have what they call an aggregation period, where they sort of average those results out and give you a minimum, a maximum, and an average. So maybe every second they will summarise those results that they've had. But the capture rate on these is quite quick.
A high granularity, really. It is a high capture rate, so you're not going to miss anything really with that.
No, and certainly if it's a cumulative overload or it's something that's enough to trip an overload device, generally it has to have been on there for a while. Now we've got the Rogowski coil here, Dave, which is what we would normally use as the sort of standard AC sensor that would go along with these, and we can use this really to aid us a bit more in the diagnostics and the fault finding side of things as well for nuisance tripping.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have to be testing an installation as a whole to say, okay, well, we're picking up something that's on this installation. We can narrow it down to a circuit or a group of circuits even. So if you had something like a split load board, dual RCD or something like that, you could potentially do half that board in one go.
So we can loop that round certain circuits.
Yeah, then start breaking it down to individual circuits once you've identified where on the board, you've kind of got a problem.
Yeah, and we do these up to sort of like a metre in length, and I know Jamie had got on his channel an example where he'd omitted certain circuits and just weaved it through, so you're capturing certain circuits with a Rogowski coil, so it does give you a bit of flexibility there to either monitor a particular circuit, a particular group of circuits, or omit circuits that you want to sort of rule out from that process. So that's reason number 5 to use your power and energy logger, nuisance tripping. So in our countdown of the top 5 reasons to use a power and energy logger, reason number 4 is to check power quality. So the loggers, these aren't power quality analyzers, so they don't really capture the very fast events like fast transients and inrush currents and things like that, but they will do the very basic and actually the most common forms of power quality. So for example, looking at things like voltage stability, Dave.
Yeah, you can take a look at how your voltage being supplied by your supplier is evening out over the course of time, which may be down to the quality of the service that they're providing you, or down to loads on your installation or your neighbour's installation.
Yeah, so I mean, your mains, your 230 volts is plus 10% minus 6%, so between 216.2 and 253 volts. So really just basically checking, power quality is your voltage within that range, because as Dave says, if it varies outside of that because some PV kicks in or some loads kick in, that can cause all sorts of problems within installations, and it is really a very common power quality symptom that we see. Obviously, going over onto things like the PEL 104, which is really more designed for commercial industrial type installations, we can look at sort of harmonics, so we can actually look at harmonics. That's not covered within the 51, which is really targeted more at the domestic market, but with the PEL, the 3-phase PELs or the PEL 104, we can look at things like harmonics, we can look at total harmonic distortion, THD, but with both of them we can do things like power factor and all of those other sort of entry-level power quality type parameters that we can look at. So really reason number 4 on there is we can use these to do some basic power quality checks on your installation. So reason number 3 is, Dave?
Surveys for EV and PV.
So we're finding more and more people are using these now. Obviously renewables, EV installations are becoming really popular with electricians. But if you're going to site and you're going to fit this stuff, do you know whether it's actually going to work? Do you know what size batteries you need? Do you know what the customer is actually using? All of this stuff, you could end up putting in batteries that are way too big and cost too much money and you lose out on the job, or you could end up not putting in enough and the customer's disappointed at the end of the day. So we've seen a big uptake in people who are doing particularly renewable installations with battery systems to use these to do pre-surveys to actually establish where these are. I think you probably have...
Not just batteries as well. If you're putting in something like a solar installation, it's good to have that data capture of how the installation is being used, what its demand is like, and whether solar is going to be a benefit for that customer or not. So if you can log that they're using a lot of energy in the day, perhaps they work from home, they've got a lot of maybe electric heating on, or maybe they're running a lot of loads during the day, then you can sell PV to them as a way of, look, we can help to calculate how quickly it's going to pay back for itself based on how it's going to reduce the import that you're taking by looking at how the installation is being utilised.
And I think you did some logging with your PEL 51 on your installation, didn't you, on your solar systems?
I certainly did, and I was quite surprised at how much of my PV that I'm just wasting away to the grid because I'm not capturing it in any kind of battery solution. But it helped to look at my peaks in my demand, and one that I identified, for example, a bit of a ridiculous thing, the dishwasher kicking in, we normally run it overnight, 3 heating cycles run over that period, and by time shifting the usage of that into the day, even on an overcast day, it would probably be more efficient than paying the import for energy at night to run that appliance. So it's a case of being able to look at the demand, the natural demand that's in use, and how an energy efficiency solution can help to satisfy that demand.
Yeah, and I think this ties in a little bit with the previous reason that we talked about, reason number 4, which was talking about power quality and voltage stability. If you're going to install like an EV charging point, if you've got a very unstable mains voltage, you can find that the charging point will switch off because the voltage is outside the parameters. With PV, your inverter will switch off because the voltage is outside of those parameters. So you really want to know about that up front before you've installed a solution, and then you're stood in front of a customer trying to explain why they're not getting the performance that they thought they were out of the system you've installed.
Never hurts to arm yourself with your data, does it?
I think a lot of data up front, especially when people are spending a lot of money on some of these installations and people have a lot of expectations with this, just adding this into your services and just doing a bit of logging beforehand, I think.
And just showing that, I think, makes you look more professional than many of your competitors perhaps who don't. If you can put that on for a period, and obviously demand will change throughout the year. Your winter demand can be quite different to your summer demand, but even if you've got a capture of a few days, whatever time of year it is, and you can show that to your customer, and they can see how their energy is being used, then that puts you potentially head and shoulders above what perhaps some of your competitors are doing.
I mean, I think a bit of a shout out to Sam at Oval Renewables. Sam's got a PEL that he's using to doing exactly that, and he can go to the customers with the data and show them exactly why he's chosen that system and what size system will be great to meet their needs. So, you know, brilliant, and I think that's well justified for being reason number 3. So we're getting down the countdown, the top 5 countdown for reasons to use the power and energy logger, and we're at reason number 2. So reason number 2 is, Dave?
Maximum demand surveys. I think this kind of links into similarly what we were just talking about with the renewables as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, so certainly the maximum demand is something we're seeing more and more with electrical installations now, and the demand is changing. You know, the sort of base loading that people have got now is very, very low. You know, it can be under 10 amps in many cases for a lot of domestic properties. But then you start chucking things in like maybe heat pumps, you start chucking in, you know, the hot tub, you start chucking in, you know, maybe some showers and some other loads in there, and EV charging points maybe. And, you know, we're looking at putting in some quite chunky loads into these installations, and how do we know whether it's going to cope or not?
Well, absolutely. I've got customers who simply don't understand that their supply is limited. And speaking for myself, I've only got a 60 amp service, which
I think it's becoming more common now.
Doesn't sound like much, but that did mean that when I wanted to install an EV charger, and because I haven't got gas and it's all electric, I had to put in some load shedding between the electric shower and the EV charger. But I had a customer recently who wanted 3 electric showers in his house on a 60 amp service, and I had to explain to him that no, your supply isn't unlimited. You don't just He's quite able to pay for the usage of the electricity. Surely if I just paying for the usage, it doesn't matter. It does matter, because you are limited to what your provider is physically supplying to your property. And sometimes you have to use this kind of equipment to make sure that demand is not being exceeded. And it's always been a question that I've been interested in as someone on a 60 amp service with a lot of electrical loads for heating, cooking, etc. And I was able to use the PEL 51 to see that my demand was indeed just about under 60 amps as a fairly sort of flat line rate. But the only way to do it is to measure it. There's no calculation you can apply to really know this.
No, I think with the wiring regs, you know, if you do these very old school maximum demand calculations where it's, you know, we allow this for a cooker and it's so much if it's got a socket attached to it and all these sort of things, it's very old hat, and also it's not time based really.
But those calculations are for initial verification only. They're not for existing installations. If you're designing an installation, designing circuits, then yes, you go by those calculations to design how that installation is going to work. But if you're faced with turning up for a condition report on an existing installation, those calculations are meaningless.
Or like say an additional alteration where you're adding a new heat pump, hot tub, whatever.
The only way you can do it is by logging, by measuring.
That's very true. And also just another thing to measure, which isn't to mention, that isn't strictly maximum demand. With the 3-phase power and energy loggers, one of the key parts of maximum demand actually is looking at load balancing, because what you find is actually a lot of times within 3-phase installations the loads are very much out of balance, so I think that's quite an important one.
Yeah, you see that quite a lot.
So getting the load balancing right can actually bring your maximum demand down by spreading it out more evenly across those 3 phases. So sometimes part of the maximum demand assessment that we're looking at is also the load balancing side of things within 3-phase installations as well. So we've arrived, we're at reason number 1 to have a power and energy logger out of our top 5 reasons. So I'll do the drum roll, you can announce it, Dave. So what's reason number 1 to have a power and energy logger?
The top spot, pop pickers, is energy efficiency surveying.
Yeah, so energy efficiency has really nowadays become very important for many, many reasons. It could be down to the price of energy, which just keeps going up. But it could also be down to your environmental credentials, and a lot of businesses specifically, you know, they want to get their carbon sort of rates down, they want to become carbon neutral and all this sort of stuff. So energy efficiency is a really hot topic, and actually using a power and energy logger is the perfect place to start if you're on your energy efficiency journey. You know, most people are told you need to save energy. How? So the first step is get a PEL, get it installed, have a look at the data, and then you can prioritise your fixes.
Yeah, I think it's great to have that baseline number at the start, because if you take an installation, even like your very own installation here, Kevin,
yeah, we've been on a bit of a journey with our installation and other videos.
We changed out the fluorescence to LED a few months ago, but we were able to take some baseline data before the conversion and after to really sort of see the effects. And if you can demonstrate those effects, because you can go to a customer and you can say, well, we can do things like changing the way your heating works, the way your lighting works, that sort of stuff. But it's kind of, it's all pie in the sky to them unless you can show them some dedicated data. So if you've got that baseline beforehand, and you can say, here's your energy use before, here's your energy use now, and there's a nice graph or some
return on investment,
some
payback period. You know, if you're pitching to an FD and saying, look, we're going to save you this money, but also if you want to prioritise changes, because what you might be planning is 3, 4, 5 different things you could do, but you want to prioritise which one should I actually do first, which one's going to have the most impact. Well, by having the data, you can go down that route. So it's a common thing that we come across, where actually sometimes people, you know, they're going to install sort of smart systems and all these sort of things, but the starting point, you need to start with that data. And then you can do your before, you can put your business cases together, and then you can verify that afterwards, and then monitor it throughout the year, because as you'll confirm with that, Dave, things change a lot between summer and winter.
Absolutely, and the advantage as well, if you're talking from a commercial point of view, if you've got something like the PEL 104, you can actually leave that logging away and network it so that you can remote into that and see some real-time data and capture that as it happens.
So really, off the back of that, you've seen the top 5 reasons to use a power and energy logger, and all of those added together, really, for me nowadays with modern contractors, really, whether you're a sort of domestic contractor looking for a PEL 51, or you're more commercial industrial working on 3-phase installations, or maybe a renewables installer, it really makes it for me now a no-brainer that everybody needs some form of data logger really in their toolbox.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's, I've said before, I think it's the next big thing. It's because the technology is now so easily accessible and relatively affordable compared to how things used to be. As you say, it's a no-brainer for someone like me to use the PEL 51, no problem. For someone who deals with commercial installations, where you've got that
I think it just gets even more
grab
important.
box, haven't you, with the
contractor's kit now that we've put
104
together for those. So, yeah, I think it just gets even more important when you start getting into the bigger installations, you know, because the savings that you can make and the services that you can offer are just so much more. And the other thing, just putting my Chauvin Arnoux hat on, with Chauvin Arnoux, we also help and support you to get into that. So if you're a bit daunted by it and you're thinking, yeah, I like the sound of it, but how do I get into it? Obviously, we're there to help and support you. We've got loads of videos and resources and stuff like that. And we've also got friends of the channel like Dave who've got content on their channels as well. Just
to say as well that you don't have to fork out for these things outright. You can hire them from places like CEF, Sunbelt Rentals. So if you've got a small job where you think, well, I don't really want to spend £1,000 or whatever on some hardware that you feel you might not utilise efficiently, you can rent for
it's very much an entry for our customers. You know, they dip their toe, they go and they hire one from maybe their local cities branch or other hirers that have got these, other Chauvin Arnoux distributors have got these things on hire. But also sometimes you might get a bigger job where you need 3, 4, 5 of these things to actually monitor a bigger installation or get it done quicker in a shorter period of time for the customer. So you can sort of surge your amount of stuff you've got by using hire. So that is a good entryway in for many people in that regard. So hopefully you've got a lot out of that. You've seen the 5 reasons that we've come up with, our top 5 reasons for having a data logger. If you want any more information or you want a product demonstration, obviously just drop us a message down in the comments and we'll be more than happy to help. See you on another video again soon.